Sometimes the deepest transformations happen in the shadows, unseen by those who cast judgment from their gilded towers. Life has a way of humbling the arrogant and elevating the resilient, often in the most unexpected and poetic ways. This is a tale of a man reduced to rubble by cruel circumstance, dismissed as pathetic by the privileged who clawed his way back, not for revenge but for redemption. It is a story where the sky itself becomes the stage for a profound lesson about the true measure of a person, proving that the view from the top looks very different to someone who once knew the depths. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. The rain that fell in London was not a pleasant downpour. Rather, it was a continuous, icy needle that pierced through layers of worn clothing. The wet air caused Elias's breath to mist as he retreated further into the nook of a bookshop that had been closed down. His environment consisted of little more than wet cardboard, the rumbling of the underground in the distance, and the pungent odor of wet concrete for him to experience. The portrait of a younger Elias, smiling next to a sleek Cessna 172 with his pilot's wings shining on his chest, was his most valued item, and it was tucked away inside his faded jacket. The photograph was plastic laminated and suffered from a tattered appearance. A very long time ago. A Bentley Mulsanne, which was sleek and black in color, came to a stop at the curb, its tires making a soft rustling sound on the damp asphalt. It was as if a cocoon of warmth, soft leather, and the clinking of crystal was revealed as the back window was lowered with a purring sound. Marcus Sterling, a hedge fund tycoon with eyes like icy shards of flint. Arabella Vance, a socialite clothed in furs worth more than Elias had ever made in a year. And Tristan Finch, a tech wunderkind engaged in his diamond-encrusted wristwatch, were the three figures that emanated wealth at the inside of the building. Arabella wrinkled her nose as the aroma of wet wool and desperation made its way to her. "Ugh, the odor of failure out here is positively medieval," she muttered as she applied perfume to her wrist, using an atomizer that was adorned with diamonds. The giggle that Marcus made was a dry, humorless sound. "It's nothing more than the local fauna, my darling. Set it aside. Pay attention to the champagne." The flute was raised by him. Tristan just gave the sky a fleeting look. "The algorithm forecasts that Nice will have clear skies. We have got priority boarding. It is irrelevant to consider this homeless node." It seemed as if he was removing a notice from his device by swiping it dismissively. During a brief moment, Elias looked directly into Marcus's eyes. "I am not begging. I am just being." Marcus's lip took on a curl. He mumbled, "Pathetic," at a volume that was loud enough to carry. Imagine you have nothing at all, none of the desire or ambition. Simply put, leeching. As the glass slid up, it encased them in a golden bubble and sealed them off. Elias was left alone with the reverberation of their disdain and the unrelenting rain as the Bentley drove away. Under his jacket, he reached out and stroked the photograph. The specter of jet fuel and checklists started to flash in his thoughts as he pondered the possibility of leeching. When the runway disappears from under your feet, you have no notion what it means to be ambitious. His wings had been cut by gale forces that were well beyond his control. He had gone bankrupt. His daughter had a medical calamity that drained everything, and he had spiraled into despair. The years went by. The voyage that Elias took back was not a montage. Rather, it was one of laborious, unseen labor. Relearning mathematics, physics, and meteorology using computers that were provided while spending the night at a shelter and the day in a library. During his time as the manager of a soup kitchen, Joe Kowalski, a stern former Air Force technician, saw the fire that was still blazing behind Elias's eyes. When he was handling tools, he saw that the hands had become calloused and moved with an awkward and exact familiarity. Joe became his anchor, providing him with a cot in his garage workshop, odd jobs maintaining engines, and most importantly, a link to a veterans aviation retraining program that Joe so vehemently fought for. A lot of Elias's energy was put into it. His comprehension was deeper, having been molded in the furnace of loss, despite the fact that he was older and his reflexes could have been a bit slower. He logged hours while others slept, flying freight flights in old turboprops across icy tundras and through tropical monsoons despite the fact that others were sleeping. The instructions were not the only thing he studied. He also studied the weight of duty, the nuanced language of cloud patterns, and the feel of metal that had been strained by the wind. It was a quiet vow that he kept the torn pilot picture in his pocket, despite the fact that he wore used clothes and saved every dime. Flight 422 arrives in Nice Côte d'Azur from London Heathrow Airport. Elias Thorne, the captain, adjusted the sharp epaulets that were worn on his shoulders. The 4 gold bars carried a significant amount of weight. While he was in the cockpit of the Airbus A320, he performed a final system check. Outside, the tarmac at Heathrow Airport was decorated with splashes of pink and gold as morning broke. Immediately next to him, the youthful and very talented First Officer Anya Sharma completed her pre-flight report. "Captain Thorne, all checkpoints are in the green. Be prepared whenever you are." After a moment of reflection, Elias gave a little nod. An arrival was not only a flight, rather it was an arrival. "I have got your clearance, Anya. Allow them to have a pleasant journey to the medical center." During the time when the passengers were boarding the aircraft, Elias made a quick appearance on the flight deck threshold and cast a typical peek down the aisle. His gaze traveled over the business-class travel compartment. Once again, there they were. Marcus Sterling, who has previously expressed his desire for a certain vintage of champagne. Arabella Vance, who was dissatisfied with the dreadfully common color combination of the upholstery. It is quite conceivable that Tristan Finch is shorting some stock or disrupting some industry while he is completely engrossed in his gadget. The recognition came very immediately, but it was just one-sided. They were imprinted into his mind, and the glass of the Bentley served as a frame for their faces. The only thing they noticed was the captain's outfit, which conveyed a sense of authority. Even more, Marcus showed his respect for the status by giving a brief and mandatory nod. There was a storm of memories that stayed in Elias's sight for a moment, including the rain, the scorn, and the word pathetic that hung in the chilly air. After that, the professional mask was able to snugly fit into its position. His grin was fleeting and unobtrusive, and it was directed at the whole cabin. "I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Hello, my name is Captain Thorne. It is our expectation that the flight to Nice will be pleasant and that it will leave on schedule." He made his way back into the cockpit, and the door shut with a satisfying click. He caught Anya's eye briefly. "Everything all right, Captain?" After taking his seat, Elias placed his hands gently on the controls of the vehicle. Hands that had pleaded for help, worked on engines, and now were responsible for the lives of 180 individuals under their care. "Perfectly, Anya," he responded, maintaining a calm tone in his voice. "It's just your typical faces. A few reminders." He did not provide any more explanation. He had no reason to do so. In the beginning, the flight was uneventful. Nevertheless, they encountered unanticipated clear air turbulence when flying over France. A sudden jerk occurred in the aircraft. In the cabin, oxygen masks were allowed to fall. The audience let out a collective gasp, which was followed by a cry from Arabella. On the armrests, Marcus Sterling's knuckles became white, and his face suddenly became pale. When Tristan Finch eventually glanced up from his laptop, he did so with eyes that reflected true terror. In the public address system, Elias's voice was a rock, devoid of any tremors, calm and authoritative in nature. "I am your captain, ladies and gentlemen," the captain said. "An unexpected amount of turbulence has been experienced by us. We ask that you quickly return to your seats and ensure that your seatbelts are firmly fastened. Please take your stations, members of the cabin staff. Currently, we are ascending to a more level altitude." Everything is in control at this point. Please keep your cool and pay attention to the crew's directions." Marcus was stirred by something that was in his voice, which was a calm and confident baritone that reverberated around the cabin. It was unclear to him where he had heard that particular tone, that underlying thread of passive power. It seemed as if he was able to see through the closed cockpit door as he strained his eyes and looked towards it. Once again, the aircraft was shaken by the turbulent air. The whimpering of Arabella could be heard. "We are going to perish as a result of some incompetent pilot." And then, all of a sudden, Marcus understood. This is not only the speech, it is also the eyes. Such a fleeting sight when we were boarding. The eyes that had greeted his in the alley that was covered with rain were not in a state of defeat, but rather a profound and unbroken resilience. The eyes that were now in charge of determining his destiny. After the blood had entirely drained from his face, he was overcome with a horrible sensation of guilt and bewilderment. He whispered, "Oh my God," but his voice was barely heard above the screech of the engine. The man in the alley." As he continued to look in horror, Arabella followed his gaze towards the cockpit. "What is it?" "Which corridor?" "The guy who is homeless." "Many years ago, in London. It's him right there. This is Captain Thorne." Marcus said the words in a hushed tone, the realization striking him like force of nature. The person who was the target of their casual brutality was now the ultimate authority who was in charge of overseeing their lives. The irony was disconcerting, alarming, and very humiliating all at the same time. As Tristan Finch looked, his tech bro bravado was completely destroyed, and it was ultimately replaced by a growing terror. The turbulence began to disappear. Elias and Anya made their way to more buoyant air with great skill. Other than that, the flight was completely unremarkable. Elias made his last pronouncement as they started their descent into Nisa, with the Mediterranean shimmering below them. "As we begin our descent into Nice Côte d'Azur, I would want to use this opportunity to address all of you. The temperature is 24 degrees, and both the sky and the weather are clear. We would want to express our gratitude to you, on behalf of First Officer Sharma and the whole crew, for choosing to travel with us today. Regardless of the bumps along the road, we hope you had a great flight. We ask that you stay seated and ensure that your seatbelts are secured until we reach the gate in a secure manner." The tone he used was one of professionalism and courtesy. There was no indication of gloating or recognition in his tone. It was the ideal voice associated with a captain. Within the business class cabin, there was an eerie silence as the jet approached the gate. The three individuals, Marcus, Arabella, and Tristan, were unable to look at each other, much alone stare in the direction of the cockpit door. The humiliation was something that could be felt, and it was heavy and oppressive. The sign that instructed people to use seatbelts fell off. As the door to the cockpit opened, there appeared Captain Thorne, towering and imposing in his uniform, looking just perfect. He continued to show the same level of professional detachment as previously as he surveyed the individuals who were disembarking. It was Marcus, Arabella, and Tristan who were the subjects of his attention. There was no smile, no judgment, and not even a hint of recognition. Just the calm authority of a guy who has weathered far stronger storms than the turbulence that occurred in the middle of the air or the microaggressions of those who were privileged. Marcus bowed his head toward the ground and hurriedly gathered his possessions. It was difficult for Arabella to glance up as she fussed with her fur. Tristan's eyes were solely focused on his footwear. Rather of displaying their typical arrogance, they walked away, leaving behind a deep and unsettling quiet. They had made fun of a guy for having nothing, only to discover, too late, that he had something that they lacked entirely: genuine resilience, acquired talent, and the grace that comes with surviving the most severe storms that life has to offer. During the process of Elias retrieving his travel luggage, his fingertips came into contact with the recognizable form that was contained inside his pocket, the ripped image. There was no need for him to look at it. He sensed the presence of it. As he walked out onto the jet bridge, the warm light of the Riviera washed over him. Not for the purpose of exacting revenge, he had flown for his own benefit. Even while the wealthy passengers behind him were silent, it was not because they were celebrating his success. Rather, it was merely the hushed echo of their own delayed comprehension. As Captain Elias Thorne made his way towards the terminal, he maintained his gaze forward, his horizon becoming more apparent. The sky, which he had lost, was now his realm for all eternity.